Despite years of attacking Joe Biden's son Hunter over his business dealings, when it comes to the Trump family's highly lucrative crypto business, defense contracts, and mining interests, some of those very same Republican lawmakers have a lot less to say.
Jack with MS Now. I was curious if you have any concerns about the president's son's profiting off of defense contracts.
The president doesn't talk to you guys. Why should I? Using complex maneuvers to pocket millions of dollars from our adversary. It is time to impeach this compromised commander-in-chief.
Do you have any concerns about it? You were concerned about Hunter Biden and Burisma.
This is a tale as old as time. Politician takes action that makes money for his family, and then he tries to conceal it.
Stablecoin venture that got UAE funding. Is there any profiting off of the presidency there? What about the Kazakhstan mining venture? Is that something you're familiar with?
Vaguely heard something about that, but I have not heard.
Does any of this, I guess, sound reminiscent of some of the Burisma concerns that you did have?
The concern here is not Hunter Biden's own problems, but rather it is official corruption from the then Vice President of the United States, Joe Biden, and now the President of the United States, Joe Biden.
Are you concerned at all by the Trump son's investments that have benefited from defense contracts and the Kazakhstan mining venture? Is that on your radar at all?
I don't have concerns on that front.
There are very legitimate questions about his ties to China, his ties to Burisma, his ties in Ukraine. We need to know the truth because it's affecting our policy right now.
Do you have any overall concerns about profiting off of the presidency for the Trump family?
Well, I love how you guys all of a sudden are like, oh, now we want to pay attention to something. Everybody should be treated the same.
Overall, is this something that you have looked into at all?
Jerry, I'm not having this interview here on the side of the road.
That's from MS Now's Jack Fitzpatrick. Joe, that captures this political era, does it not? Which is the false outrage about things that were happening in the Biden administration, going after Hunter Biden for something that on the spectrum of what's happened now in the first year and a half of the second Trump term in terms of self-dealing, self-enrichment, what the sons have been able to do and how they've been able to profit, just completely pales in comparison to what Hunter Biden did.
It's child's play. It's child's play. Like, he sold his art for what? 50, 60? I don't know how much he sold his art for, but it wasn't $2 billion. It wasn't $3 billion. It wasn't possibly $4 billion. And I had people that were in the MAGA adjacent media, MAGA adjacent friends that melted down for years over whether Hunter Biden flew on Air Force Two and talked business on Air Force Two. These sort of things are quaint compared to, again, the defense contracts, the mining deals. And I heard Chip Roy talking about how, oh, well, this is important because this could change policy right now. Really? You're talking about changing policy right now? You look at what these deals have been. I mean, they've twisted and contorted foreign policy. You know, there were some times that we didn't get everything right the first term. I remember talking about Ivanka Trump and some trademarks or something. That ended up being something that she had already registered for. But with the sons and with Donald Trump and with the money that they're making right now, again, we're talking billions and billions of dollars straight into their pockets. It's pure corruption, and it is actually impacting foreign policy. It is actually impacting the decisions that Donald Trump is making inside of the White House. And these Republicans are saying absolutely nothing. Now, listen, a couple ways you can look at it. You can get angry and you say, oh, my God, they're such hypocrites. How could they look at themselves in the mirror? They should be ashamed of themselves. I'd just rather see what the voters think about it in the fall, because corruption does matter. At the end of the day, you know, in Hungary, it wasn't all of the authoritarian overreach that Orban displayed through the years. It was corruption that helped bring him down. And I think it may be corruption and the fact that these Republicans are sitting by and allowing this to be the most corrupt administration in the history of America. And please, if anybody thinks there's a close second, please let me know. in terms of dollars? Please let me know. Somebody said there's like a Teapot Dome scandal happening every day inside this White House, and everybody's grown numb to it. So if Republicans aren't going to say anything about it, okay, I think their voters may, and that will be bad news for them. With us talking about this, opinion writer for the New York Times, Maury Gay, and staff writer at The Atlantic, Mark Leibovich. Mark, I start with you. Just talk about the numbness, how everybody is so numb to the fact that Donald Trump is bringing in people to the White House, talking up their products. Then you find out he's invested in their companies. He's pushing and promoting these companies that he's invested in already. Or you can talk about the crypto business, or you can talk about the defense deals, or you can talk about all of these other things where they've made billions and billions of dollars. And yet these same Republicans who were melting down over Hunter Biden possibly bringing a business associate on Air Force Two, suddenly it doesn't matter. I'm not going to talk about this. Of course you're not going to talk about it, because you'd have to admit they're fleecing America. They're fleecing our allies. They're fleecing anybody. They're open to the highest bidder.
I'm beginning to think that politicians in the Republican Party are guilty of hypocrisy. Now, I don't really know. I could be wrong about this, but has that occurred to anybody here? I mean, I've always been an idealist around these things. Look, there has always been a double standard in politics. I mean, there's selective outrage. It's sort of part of what goes on here. The orders of magnitude of difference here are just so stunning. And I do sort of disagree with the idea that it's a numbing effect, because I do think that people are collectively aware of it, and it could be an anything but numb response at the ballot box in November. I think it's just the only numbing part about it is it's hard to wrap your brain around. And the dollar signs, the dollar values are so high. Some of these actions are so audacious that it's really hard to sort of find language for them. But I do think that the numbness, we're going to sort of see how this is really playing, because it really is straight up corruption.